Hello and welcome to my new video. Today I will be diving into 3 speed paints and giving tips on my rendering process. So I really hope this helps someone and there will be a more in-depth rendering tutorial in the future. My workflow is divided up into 2 sections, base coloring and sketching, and rendering. So I have my sketch all laid out for me. It's basically a frame of the drawing, and it makes my rendering process super easy, as all I need to do is draw over it, fix it up, add details, and just make it look much more refined, as there's no planning involved in the rendering phase, and I can just sort of relax. I find that this workflow really works for me, as sometimes my inspiration comes in chunks and I don't have the motivation to sketch, I don't have the right mindset to start drawing, and I will just sit down, start rendering, and basically shut off my brain. It's just so much easier in my opinion. As you can see here, I've basically been coloring all over my sketch, basically covering up everything and just redefining all the colors, adding form and shading into the hair, and redefining the entire drawing. Being able to render so well comes with a lot of practice. I've been doing a lot of studies on other artists and basically using a lot of inspiration from Pinterest. Oh my gosh, Pinterest, my savior for inspiration and motivation. But mainly knowing how to light and shade your character or background during rendering is really important, because your mind understands how the character should be drawn, and rendering and redefining should come really easy for you. I think the reason why most artists see rendering as daunting or feel like they can't do it properly is because they don't have the proper knowledge on form and lighting. Rendering really forces you to have correct shading and lighting, because cell shading can be, oh, there's an object. Oh, let me add some darker color and block it in. Okay, looks great. Rendering with the hard and soft shadows forces your brain to work more realistically. That's why most rendering is associated with a similar realism art style and cell shading with anime. But I do have both, and I think rendering is just an extension of cell shading, mostly because it has more dramatic lighting and softer shadows. One last thing I keep in mind while rendering is keeping my colors diverse. For example, the hair has a big chunk of pink, and that would be boring if not for the lighting. I would add lighting and then vary my saturation and hues. For example, pink, I would use some purple, blue, and add in that pop of color that works sometimes. This can be hard to do if you're not familiar with how colors work with each other and what places you should put them in. If you overdo this, it'll look like a rainbow vomit. And if you don't do this, I do feel like it doesn't give rendering the color variety it needs. Some problems I noticed with trying to render: a lot of people prefer cell shading over rendering just because their line art doesn't match their rendering style. So personally for me, I go for more painterly style. It just works. I color right over that sketch and I render right over it. So that's what works for me, but I have seen some people do really clean rendering. It's very hard shadows, somewhat like cell shading, but very well done. There's some soft shadows in there, and it's super clean, and the lighting looks so great. That goes well with line art, but personally me, if you have a painterly style, or if you tend to go a little more abstract, I add back some of the line art just to give a little more definition into the character I'm drawing, some hard shadows. But otherwise, I would try to find some artists who use line art and rendering and try to copy how they do it, it'll be so much easier. Another reason I choose to use my sketch and color over that instead of doing a new layer of line art is 1, it saves time. I don't want to do line art. And 2, sketch is so much flowier. It has those random brush strokes, and that is what I want to see in my final drawing. Just like lowering the opacity of your sketch, if your line art is a little more transparent, it's going to help with the cohesiveness of your colors later on and help it come together. I also like to use texture brushes when I sketch because it makes it feel a lot more lively. Line art usually feels very stiff, so that's another reason why I add it back after rendering. Unless you want to have clean line art and clean rendering, it's going to be really hard to pull off that lively sketch look. In beginner cell shading, I see a lot of artists not pay attention to the form of what they are drawing and instead shade one side of the object or character they are drawing. So it will just be shading down the side of the hair, down the side of each spike in the bangs, and it just doesn't look good. Another thing I see when attempting rendering is too many soft shadows. It looks blurry, it looks muddy, it doesn't look good. So we want to balance out hard and soft edges. For example, hard edges is when light shines on a surface. For example, a table, there's a defining edge, but on skin or something, when an object is blocking another one, there will also be a very hard shadow defining the edges of that object. But for ambient lighting, for example, a cylinder, which is still 3D, but is smooth and round, it will have soft shadows showing the form of the object, but no hard shadows, as unlike a cube, it does not have any hard edges and no hard object is blocking it. In order to be good at rendering, you don't have to shade everything you come across. You don't have to shade every single part of the hair or anything. You just need to understand the form of the object and shade it correctly. Also, adding colors masterfully can really make your art pop, and your rendering will come out much nicer. And here's the final reveal of the last drawing. Thank you so much for watching this video to the end. I hope you enjoyed watching the speed paint for all 3 of those illustrations, and I hope those 3 tips also helped you on your own rendering process, or if you just did cell shading. I hope you enjoyed the transitions and little bubbles I put during the video, and I'm done talking. Bye!